I want to move on to what's happening in other parts of the world. Mexico's president is calling for calm after the death of the country's most wanted man, cartel leader El Mencho. He was killed in a Mexico military operation, and that was with the help of US intelligence. At least 25 National Guards have been killed as retaliatory violence spreads across the city. Josh, I want to get your thoughts on this because during a call into Fox and Friends, Donald Trump claimed that Mexico's president has effectively ceded control of the country to drug cartels. He said the cartels are running Mexico. She's not running Mexico. The cartels are running Mexico. And he went on to say that something is going to have to be done with Mexico. Josh, what's your assessment of what's happening over there?
Well, this is one of the worst kept secrets in all of American politics. For decades, we've been under the illusion, and really it is an illusion, that Mexico is actually a functioning country. For instance, back in the 1990s, Bill Clinton signs NAFTA, this free trade agreement between the three large North American countries, Canada, the United States, Mexico. So we've been treating Mexico as a legitimate country, whether it's militarily, diplomatically, economically, for a very long time. Unfortunately, the defining feature of what it means to be a sovereign entity in politics since time immemorial is, do you have a monopoly on the use of force? That to me, thinking about political theory 101, the rule of law, that is the defining question above all. There are some secondary questions. That is the question to define yourself as a sovereign entity. And unfortunately, Mexico, arguably any other country in the Western Hemisphere, but certainly considerably more than the United States, Canada, and most other first world countries, flunks that test profusely because they do not have a monopoly on the use of force, because there are rogue, murderous cartels, some of these most murderous, violent groups, not just in the Western Hemisphere, but frankly in all of the world. Organizations that are in cahoots with Lebanese Hezbollah, that have been in cahoots in the past with the Chinese Communist Party. Horrific organizations have indeed had operational control of large swaths, not just small swaths, but large swaths of especially northern Mexico for really as far back as I've been following U.S. politics. So this is not a new development. The president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, is a total far leftist. She's essentially a Marxist. And Donald Trump properly has been talking very tough to President Sheinbaum, saying, you better get your act in order, because if you don't do so, the United States is going to come in there and we are going to do it for you. For instance, there was this brief intermittent shutdown of the federal airspace over El Paso, Texas, the city in West Texas, right on the Mexico border. That was due to some cross-border back and forth due to the cartels there. So I interpret this as Sheinbaum essentially trying to forestall some sort of American action. She has seen what happened in Venezuela with Maduro. She's watching carefully what's happening with Iran and escalating tensions there. She doesn't want Mexico, frankly, to be next there. But it's a reminder again. I mean, Puerto Vallarta is a very popular tourist destination. I have been as a tourist personally myself there, and seeing these images, these videos on TV of all the billowing black smoke from the cartel violence, it's a really bad look for Mexico, and it's a stark reminder to the world that they failed the definition of what it means to be a sovereign entity. The good news, the silver lining, is that they got this massive cartel leader. So kudos to that, I suppose.
Yeah, Alex, I want to get your thoughts on that as well. I suppose Donald Trump has really put other countries on notice, particularly with his action in Venezuela at the start of the year.
So the special thing about this incident in Mexico, I think, is less about Sheinbaum and her politics and more about the state of the cartels. I think Josh laid it out pretty effectively. They are the most powerful political force in Mexico by far. I don't know that there's a good analog that I can think of, obviously, in history for a comparable non-state actor that is as powerful as they are. They have control and relationships in Canada with First Nations. They have relationships with Chinese triads and organized crime across the Pacific. They organize and smuggle illegal tobacco all over the world. They're involved in the opium trade. They weren't always this powerful, but they are incredibly powerful now. They're a big part of why South America and Central America has gotten as violent as it has. Why the president of Costa Rica just got elected as somebody who promised to stamp out crime in a country that has historically been pretty safe. And so they're just really powerful. They are exporting violence in a way that I think the Trump administration may find impossible to ignore. They have taken several steps to put sanctions, for example, on the Canadians because of what they were doing to kind of turn a blind eye on some of the Sinaloa cartel activity. And this is the strangest thing about this, is that normally it doesn't break through that there's fires in a vacation destination where lots of Westerners go. When that does start to happen, that makes it easier for a U.S. administration who has clearly showed it's willing to use force to perhaps use more force. And so I would expect that that is at least on Donald Trump's mind, if not actively being planned right now.
Well, he's certainly got a lot on his plate. We've heard from US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. He warned that Iran could be a week away from having industrial-grade bomb-making material. Again, escalating concerns over Tehran's nuclear capabilities. Let's listen to him.
The president he gave Jared and I direction before we went over there. There were red lines, zero enrichment. We have to have the material back. You know, they say that it's all about their civil program, and yet they've been enriching well beyond the number that you need for civil nuclear. It's up to 60%. They're probably a week away from having industrial grade bomb making material, and that's really dangerous. So they can't have that. This is something that they have to stick with until they prove to us that they can behave.
Josh, I know we've spoken about the tensions between the US and Iran for some time now, but what do you make of what Steve Witkoff had to say there? Is this yet another sign that the US is another step closer to taking action?
So the first thing to say is that if you go back to last June, Gabriella, and the 12-day war culminating in Operation Midnight Hammer, the dropping of the B-2 hammers, there was a lot of debate as to just how far set back the Iranian nuclear program was. I will never forget Donald Trump saying, and this is kind of classic Trumpian braggadocio, that it's been entirely eliminated. There's no coming back from
obliterated.
this. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the actual assessment, when you actually looked at the intelligence community's assessment, was they said it was set back 3 to 5 years, maybe. I mean, it's a very rough estimate, obviously. But yes, I mean, we knew that there was fissile material, that there was highly enriched uranium that was not taken out in those various B-2 bombs last June. So no, I'm not surprised at all that this question is back on the table and back on the table so soon. It's probably a little sooner than I would have thought, to be honest with you, but it is here back on the table. Look, earlier today, the second aircraft carrier strike group, the USS Gerald Ford, arrived in the Eastern Mediterranean, where it's going to park for now. That is the world's largest aircraft carrier, like literally number one, not number two, number three. And that's a complement to the USS Abraham Lincoln, which is already there in the region. Overall, this is the largest accumulation of American military might in one particular part of the world. Most folks are saying since the 2003 invasion to topple Saddam Hussein in Iraq. I would be flabbergasted at this point if nothing happened. It seems to me that that this is a lot of song and dance, a lot of kind of kabuki theater. We can kind of quibble and debate as to why exactly it's going on this long there. But at this point, after all this, after all the talk of the Red Line, all the boasting of the world's greatest armada since the 16th century Spanish Armada, or whatever it is Donald Trump's been saying there, he really has to follow through. Now, a quick caveat. If I were advising him, to be honest with you, this is not how I would have personally advised going about this process. I'm much more of a Teddy Roosevelt, speak softly, carry a big stick kind of guy. Donald Trump, again, the man of the braggadocio, that's not really how he rolls, to be honest with you. So he took a very different approach there. And Donald Trump hates Iran. There's a very important thing to remember here. He really hates Iran. In his very first speech down the escalator in Trump Tower in 2015, like his first speech announcing his campaign there, he said that we're not going to allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon. He showed that he was serious about that last June, and I have absolutely no reason for doubting that he will be serious about that again this time, if need be, which I think is going to be the case.
Yeah, Alex, I would be very surprised if we don't see action. But Alex, what are the polls telling us about this? I know some Americans are quite divided over the issue. I mean, this is such a huge decision. What are the polls telling us? Does Donald Trump have the support to do this, or how will this impact him?
Well, he hasn't had preemptive support from polls historically. When you ask, we did prior to the 12-day war, if people supported various versions of getting involved. And in each case, people supported Israel getting involved. They supported the United States helping Israel by narrower margins, but really overwhelmingly opposed the U.S. getting involved directly. About this, I would expect that the numbers would say about the same. I haven't done any polling personally on it yet. We're about to. People don't want to go to war. Americans don't want to be at war. they do like getting the benefits of war without any of the costs. And so if Trump can deliver that, as he's done in a couple of circumstances, then people would be okay with that. That is perhaps what he's hoping to do. I would maybe push back on Josh on one thing, that he's got the biggest stick in town right now. He doesn't speak softly, like Teddy Roosevelt said. He speaks quite loudly and carries a big stick. But it is compelling. It is overwhelming. It looks very much like it's going to be used. And that's the point. And so if the Iranians believe him, and I hope that they do, then they'll come to the negotiating table. They're great negotiators. But if they don't, then I like Josh, also think that there is going to be some kind of action. And frankly, the comments by Witkoff with Iran getting close to getting a nuclear weapon, that's not necessary. They don't have to get to that level for the U.S. to engage. But if they do, it'll make it much more likely that the U.S. does engage, because they've proven over and over again that they're responsible. When they killed, most recently, I've seen numbers like 50,000 of their own people. I'm not sure that I believe those numbers because they're so extreme. But any regime willing to gun down its own civilians just for protesting is not one that should survive long term.
Yeah, and that's it too. I mean, freeing the Iranian people from this regime. We have to leave it there. Alex Tarasio, Signal Principal and Pollster, and of course, Josh Hammer, Senior Editor at Large at Newsweek. Thank you both so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Gabriella.
Thanks for having us.